It's that time of the week. It's Rushcast. Welcome back. You're back in the nightmare cabin. I'm joined by Paul. And what are we? 7 episodes in now. We are rocking. There is no stopping us. This is Rushcast, and this is the show where we are going through the entire back catalogue of Rush, and we'll be going through past the solo albums and side projects as we go as well. And this week we are doing Hemispheres.
Mm-hmm.
We are coming to the end of an era. We're coming to the end of the prog, or strictly speaking, prog at least, of Rush. This is the one at least where an entire side is taken up by one song. Let's have a look at the album on Hot Work there. CD just fell out. And have you got an LP to show off, Paul?
I have, because obviously this is the big print version for us older people, and I can see the lyrics. But yes, this is, again, it's not an original. This one actually, though, is the second Rush album that I actually bought, if memory serves me. And I bought this one because it was in a limited red vinyl. I don't know if you can see that. A red vinyl disc. So this was the second one. I just thought I'm not saying it's rare. I think there was quite a few of these made and pressed. But it was the second album that I picked up of theirs. And well, as you've said already, it's the last one of their prog, what they would call the prog rock, and their grandiose musical extravaganzas as such, although they would still be prog really right the way through, just doing it in a different way. What did you think listening?
Tell you what, I'm actually a little bit gutted we're recording this episode, because it means I'm going to have to start listening to the next album, and I'm quite sad to see this one go for the time being. I've been really enjoying this album all week, and it's just a dreamy, magical album. You know, it's so good. And again, you know, you've got a whole side taken up by one song, but again, it's not off-putting. It's not inaccessible. It's not widdly or all the rest of it. I would say self-indulgent, but there is an exercise in self-indulgence coming up.
Yeah, at least they're blatant.
But yeah, this is the pinnacle of that. We started it with, I mean, it's often referred to as the end of a trilogy, starting with 2112, Farewell Kings and Hemispheres. But I would argue, well, no, it really started on Caress of Steel, didn't it?
I would say it started on Caress of Steel.
This is the pinnacle of it, and Rush themselves had to acknowledge, look, this has gone as far as it can go. And I think this one was a bit of a bastard to record as well.
It was.
One thing I didn't do when I showed off the all singing, all dancing edition last week of A Farewell to Kings, it had a pretty thick booklet and it had a really good article written on it. And when I was reading it, I was gutted I didn't read it before, because there was a lot of stuff I could have referred in the show. But hey ho, it's happened now. But yeah, I've actually got the all singing, all dancing edition of Hemispheres as well.
Okay.
This one, it's a 2 CD, not the Farewell Kings was 3 CDs, but this is one. And this is live at the Pink Pop Festival, 1979. Now, I've seen some reviews on Amazon that have complained that it's not the full show. It does explain in the article here that it's got some updated artwork as well. And and what it does explain that, there's many a debate that they actually open with Anthem, not A Passage to Bangkok. But they're saying this is a radio recording. Yeah. And if they did, in fact, open with Anthem that day, there's no reason to. If that was the regular opener on that tour.
Yeah.
But it's not on that recording. If it is, it
no.
doesn't.
No, I remember. Yeah, I remember the Pink Pop Festival being broadcast on the radio.
Yeah, and at the end, you've got Live in Arizona, 2112 in full. all 6 parts. And the reason that is, again, people have gone, why didn't they have the whole gig? Apparently, the performance of 2112 at the Pink Pop Festival misses the overture and Temples of Syrinx. So they decided to put another recording from the same tour on it. So at least you got the full thing.
Yeah.
The people that have complained on Amazon obviously haven't read that. So
no.
There you go, folks. If you are thinking of getting it, you're not being shortchanged. If anything, you're getting a better. But yeah, there's a few bits as well I've noted when it comes to lyrics and artwork and that. So remind me to refer to that later. But yeah, again, you get a really good write-up and all the rest of it. I'm liking these anniversary editions. I didn't get the 2112 one simply because I didn't realise it was out, but I have looked it up and
yeah. It's something I haven't got around to buying any of them yet, but I will attempt to, definitely.
I highly recommend Farewell to Kings one. If I was going to choose one so far,
that would be
you get a little bit of everything, because with 2112 you get a lot of people covering the songs, which generally with releases like that, I mean, I did a thing recently where I bought a bunch of CDs of this record label that's putting together compilations of people covering songs when they do an whole album. So yeah, Rush have done their own one on that, and yeah, you can take that or leave it if you like, but I personally want a concert or some demos or something to do with a band. With a Farewell to Kings, you get the best of both worlds. You get a full concert and covers. So yeah, you can best of both worlds on that one. This one though, you just get the live stuff, but live stuff is very, very good. Yeah, with that out of the way, like I say, this is the pinnacle of the prog Rush, a whole album, and you literally get 4 songs. But you are not shortchanged on lack of music in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, definitely not. No.
And it, what is the total length of the album? Just out of interest,
I think it's about 36 minutes.
Right. Okay.
It, in some respects, it's sort of one of their shorter ones, but the amount of work that they had to put into producing this album, they had to work so hard to try and capture, particularly Hemispheres, but I think also La Villa Strangiato, the last one, which although this is an album of an ending, it's also a beginning. This was the first of their purposeful instrumentals, which would pop up from time to time on various subsequent albums. It was something that they would start to incorporate into their shows more. I wonder if it was to give Geddy's voice a rest, possibly.
It is 36 minutes, by the way. Yeah, I was just looking at
yeah, it is 36 minutes. Yeah, and of course, half of it is taken with the official title Cygnus X1 Book 2 Hemispheres, which is broken down into 6 parts. This, as you said, was a difficult album for them to make, and they had to work hard to capture it. Various time signatures to capture, although, as you're always with Rush, they seem to be able to draw a nice straight line through it that you're not even aware that there are these various time signatures going on.
Yeah, as much as it was difficult to record, it's certainly not difficult to listen to.
No, it's not.
But apparently they did have trouble keeping track of what was recorded and what wasn't. When it came to all the separate bits, it was piecing it together. Let me try this. La Villa Strangiato.
Yeah.
The classical guitar at the beginning, aside, was recorded in one take. Just in case you was feeling insignificant.
That's interesting, because that's not what I've been told.
Well, it's recorded in a single take, but they recorded 40 takes. So that is the one where they nailed it. But apparently Geddy was determined to record it in one take. So it was recorded in one take, but 40 takes is what it took.
It's interesting, because the things I've got, and also I remember Terry Brown talking about this, that they were determined to record it in one hit, but they couldn't, and they had to break it down into 3 parts and do it. They had to admit defeat on that, and that's Terry Brown, who produced the album. They wanted to play it all in one hit, but because I know we're jumping.
I may have misread that then, because
yeah. I'm only going by what that was said there, and what I've got in the book here. La Villa Strangiato is effectively an instrumental with. I know we're jumping all over the place here. That is actually broken down into 12 parts, or 12 passages of music strung together, although there are certain ones that it would come back to, again, the Strangiato theme and the monsters part. They're sort of repeated a couple of times, so we'll get to that as and when we get to it. But that's what Terry Brown said about La Villa Strangiato. But certainly he said with regards to the side track, that was extremely hard for them to piece that together. And also lyrically, it's again complex lyrically as well, and goes into mythology, fantasy. Some people say that it's more lyrically involved and more lyrically complex than Fountain of Lamneth and 2112. I don't know really. I think it's just different. I think.
I've got a little quip here. Neil has quipped that the band worked on La Villa Strangiato longer than the entire Fly By Night album.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, that is the other comment.
I'm looking for it here, and I'm sure I've got one of Alex insisting that it was done. Maybe his was done. Maybe that's the. But he saying that he was. I can't see it now. Mind you, Alex has always got his tongue firmly wedged into his cheek, so he might be going, "Well, I did it in one take. I can't speak for the other." Yeah, he might have been doing it like that. But
no, I've got it here on my. It says, so ambitious was this piece that after countless attempts to record it in one take, the band finally relented and split the take into 3.
Right. Okay.
It's not a case of. I wasn't there, so I don't know. I'm only going by what is written here, and also what Terry Brown said in an interview with regards, and he's the producer, saying that they were determined to do it in one take, but no matter how hard they tried, they had to admit defeat and break it down into 3 parts and then stitch it together. And of course, that's no different to what they had to do with Hemispheres. They had to just bring it.
Sure, I read something with Alex saying no, it was, and he said because the classical guitar at the beginning, you can, if you listen closely, you can hear the sort of switch. Oh shit! But never mind, doesn't matter.
It's just a little interesting detail.
I have got a little bit here from Neil discussing the artwork.
Yeah,
so
go on then.
We'll go into that before we get into the music.
Yeah,
okay?
Of course.
If I can find it. I'm posting thing. Trees. No, right. Come on, Joe, find it. You was looking at it just a second ago. Aha, right. I think we got it.
Yeah, go on.
Constraint the gatefold sleeve elected to have 3 brains and in those. No. Oh, come on. I was looking straight at it. Right. Basically, it's about. I'm going to paraphrase. I'd like to read Neil's direct quote.
Mm-hmm.
But to paraphrase, it's the 2 sides of the brain, 2 sides of humans. So you've got the restrained and you've got the free flow. You've got emotions and the heart, and you've got the brain and logic. So you've got chaos in restraint.
Yeah.
That's basically the concept of the boncept. And here we go. Right, so Hemispheres came up with a brilliant juxtaposition of a naked archetypal man. Have I said that right?
Yeah.
Archetypal man standing on one of three brains, gesturing towards a rather straight-looking businessman in a suit with a bowler hat and a walking stick. When speaking to Neil in 1978 about the dichotomy between the left and right spheres of the brain. Oh, this is the guy that did the artwork talking, not Neil.
Yeah.
So we developed the notion that we are comprised of balance, of tension between that of reason and rationale, heart or emotion. Neil and I, appreciating Rene Magritte's, I think that is, surrealist works, opted to tip our hat to Magritte, I've pronounced that wrong, Son of Man, or our dapper Apollonian man of reason in constraint on the far left side of the brain, while man on the opposite right side of the brain is represented by our spirited dancer figure, Dionysus.
Dionysus.
There you go.
Yeah.
Unfettered, but you shouldn't laugh at people who mispronounce words because it means they're reading.
I'm not laughing.
That's the audience I'm talking to, not you. Dionysus, unfettered by the trappings or constraints of clothing or reason, apparently beckoned the men in the black suit, bowler hat, and cane. The hope being that we as individuals can come to a place of balance and harmony as we endeavour to coexist with heart and mind, united in a single perfect sphere. Well, that's just bloody obvious, wasn't it? I mean, come on.
It is obvious, and that's exactly that's lyrics from the final part of it.
And I have got a little bit here about the lyrics for the first track as well. So I'll put that aside for now.
Yeah.
And
but
if I haven't put everyone to sleep reading
that. I don't think you have. Yes, it's the battle between heart and mind, basically, isn't it? That's what this is all about, and which, I mean, it's summed up in that prelude, just them.
Reason and instinct.
The gods of love and reason sought alone to rule the fate of man. Battling through the ages, their people were divided, every soul a battlefield. It just, that sets up the whole thing, the prelude of it. And then, of course, you go into the two main parts, Apollo and Dionysus in the second and the third part. Clever lyrics. And again, Neil, with his prowess, just manages to distill everything in a very simple way for everyone to sort of grab hold of it, really. But yeah, I think it must have been quite a lot of work on his part to even just get this set of lyrics for all these parts down together in something that could be put to music, really. And again, I dare say there was some work between Geddy and himself into getting it in a presented way. The thing that is interesting about this whole side is because they were working so hard and they were trying to hurry it along to get it recorded that, and again, this is a comment by Terry Brown, that they forgot and they didn't realise that they'd recorded it all a semitone higher than what it should have been, which made it more difficult for Geddy to sing. But I don't hear that. To me, it sounds like he's done a fantastic job of singing this, but it's in his higher register, and it shouldn't have been. It should have all been a bit lower.
I think the saving grace is that it was Geddy. If it was another singer, probably wouldn't have got away with it.
Oh no, definitely not. Definitely not. And the other thing is, and again, it's a comment from Geddy, that at this point they were possibly playing a little bit beyond themselves. And again, I don't hear that. I just hear a really brilliantly constructed album, although obviously we didn't see the effort they had to put into producing this. We only hear the result of it. But again, to me, it sounds like a band very much in control and really at pretty much the top of their game. But they say possibly they were playing just slightly beyond themselves. which I can't hear that, Joe. I can't hear that at all. It just sounds like a really brilliantly executed piece of music.
Yeah, no, they just need to practice a bit more. They weren't all that really, were they? I've just got. I'm looking for this again because it was. I've just thought. Yeah, right. Cygnus X1 Book 2 Hemispheres would only be played in its entirety on the fall of 1978, spring 1979 tour, whose purpose, of course, was to promote the then current Hemispheres album. Even on that tour, for many of the later dates, the piece was played in an abridged form. After 1979, the prelude was the only section of Hemispheres ever played on stage, and then only on the 1994, 2004, and 2015 tours. So yeah, it was only played in full.
Yes, it was.
Beginning.
Yeah.
So yeah, just in case if you're not quite with us, this Hemispheres opens with part 2 of what closed A Farewell to Kings. So we've got Cygnus X1 and then Cygnus X1 Book 2 Hemispheres, which is the title of the thing. So did they? I'm sure they did back 1 and 2 back together, all in one go.
I seen them do it on the Permanent Waves tour.
Was that abridged though?
That was an abridged Hemispheres.
Fair enough, because that would have been a long night.
That was it. But I can't remember quite how they abridged it, because I remember them playing every part of it, but probably an abridged version of each part. But yeah, they did do, and I think even on the Hemispheres tour they would do Cygnus X1 going into this, so they did the whole thing. So that must have been something to see. I mean, that would be a very long, as you say, a very long song, effectively pushed. But I definitely see them do it on the Permanent Waves tour, and as always, it was. But that was it. The only time I've ever seen them do is what you've said. What you've stated is they only ever played the prelude. From then on live, they didn't play any other part of Hemispheres at all.
I think I'll just, before we get into the music, then I'll get a little quote here from Mr. Mike Portnoy.
Yeah.
Who is a fairly decent drummer, all things considered. So yeah, place the record in the context of the band's catalogue, and then Portnoy says, well, for me, Hemispheres is the perfect combination of the prior 2 albums, 2112 and Farewell to Kings. It was the conceptual sidelong piece like 2112 had, and it's even got more technical, progressive nature of where they were going with the songs in A Farewell to Kings. So it's the best of both worlds for me. I think it's the quintessential, most progressive album Rush ever made. Basically just 4 songs, a huge sidelong epic, with each of the others being mini epics and one an instrumental, which I guess at the time was the first full-blown instrumental that they had ever done, not counting 2112's overture or the little drum solo in Caress of Steel. So really, for me, Hemispheres represented the ultimate prog rock presentation from Rush. Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
I think that's quite succinctly put, and I wouldn't disagree with it at all. But yeah, it's going. Sorry.
No, so what we get on Cygnus 1 at the end of Farewell to Kings is a story about a voyage into the stars that ends up getting sucked into a black hole, and
this is the other side of it.
Yeah, then we get what's the other side, and the space traveler, for want of a, gets taken into the cosmos of enlightenment. I don't know, really.
Well, yeah. Well,
to me, I just basically went, right, in layman's terms, you ever seen 2001: A Space Odyssey? Yeah, that basically is the way I saw it.
Yeah, definitely. It's it goes from science fiction into this science fantasy mythology, really, and it sort of leans heavily on the Greek mythology of the characters. Although Dionysus says on this it's bringer of love, but in the Greek mythology, I think is the god of wine. So there's a slight change, but it was changed obviously to suit and to fit this idea. They said on here, I don't know whether you've got this, and I didn't really realise this, but they were saying that this album and Hemispheres, this particular side, it says here, after courting controversy with the attachment of some of Ayn Rand's philosophical ideas, this single-sided composition is based on the work of another contentious author, Friedrich Nietzsche. And I think that's how he's Nietzsche.
Yeah.
Nietzsche, not Nietzsche. Nietzsche, beg your pardon. The work it's based on is the birth of tragedy from the spirit of music. Claims that man's self-understanding is achievable through art and most effectively through music. That's what I've got here.
You've got, Beyond Good and Evil.
Yeah.
Twilight of the Idols. I've got a couple of his books down there actually. I'll be honest, I bought them and they just sort of sat on the shelf really. But at some point, if you are a deep reader, everyone goes through a Nietzsche phase apparently.
Yeah, Nietzsche. Apparently,
But even if you you don't have to agree with everything you read. That's the whole point of reading.
Yeah, exactly.
But people don't understand that these days. But yeah, to go and let's get it from the man himself. So the original science fiction story concerned a space traveler boldly hurtling his way into a black hole in Cygnus X1. For book 2, the story morphed into a treatise of the inner and social worlds of mankind, using Greek philosophy as the basis for the central metaphor of the narrative. And then Neil Peart. The basic idea for the piece came from the book I was reading, Adam Smith's Powers of Mind, sorry.
Okay.
It was just an accidental thing, but it was something I had read before. So I tied it into a whole set of things, and it's basic constant conflict between thoughts and emotions, between your feelings and your rational ideas. Apollo and Dionysus have been used in a lot of books to characterize these two elements, the rational side and the instinctive side. I've always been interested in the ways of these two themes transmit themselves into people in political life or in social life. All these conflicts, whether the instinctive way is right or the rational way are right, are always going on between people. The basic theme of Hemispheres is at conflict. Armageddon, the fourth section of the piece, is really the focus of that. It's the climax of that conflict of our hero Cygnus comes in and breaks up the conflict. One of the main points that I wanted to make is that the battle is inside each of us. It's not some abstract cosmic battle. And there you have it. I hate it when people need it spelled out for them. It's obvious. So
yes, it is.
There you go.
That's it.
And now we're going to get really complicated and get into the music.
Yeah, exactly. It is instrumentally and the music. It is quite a heavy. I'm not talking about like as in metal, but heavy processed. I mean, just the guitar effects with this, and also the dissonant chords that Alex uses, really gives it that flavour and almost otherworldly feel to it. And I think people would come to know there to be the Hemispheres chord, which would further underline how great a player Alec Lifeson was and is. It's just called the Hemispheres chord. I don't know what chord it is. But
is it that one about 2 minutes in? It's like
boom, boom. I think it's just them initial.
Slightly at the beginning, you get the similar thing at the beginning of Red Part Jetta, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just Again, I mean, we've said it every time, but of course, I think the musicianship is superb, and if they are playing beyond themselves, it doesn't sound like it to me. It just sounds like they're really on it, and just again, that interplay, and they're all jousting. Oh, they're almost. It's sort of like a duel between them. All three of them, really. They're all sort of. I know they're playing together and they're very syncopated, but the emphasis keeps ebbing and flowing between them, doesn't it? I know Alex takes the main lead of it all, but
I think Rush will forever go down in history as having one of the greatest drummers of all time. I think if you're into your drumming, you can't not count Neil Peart as one of your top 5. And if Neil isn't your favourite drummer, I guarantee you he is your favourite drummer's favourite drummer. You know, and he was very humble as well. He was never egotistical about it. And top, he soon brushed that off and said, "No, I'd give anything to be good as this drummer or that drummer." And then that, Stuart Copeland, apparently, his favourite drummer is Stuart Copeland. And I've seen Stuart Copeland, Neil Peart says you're his favourite drummer. What? How?
Yeah.
Look at, so, but with that being said, as much as Neil's gone down as, the quintessential drummer, Alex Lifeson is, especially in these early albums, I think he is it starts off as he is the star of the show, so to speak. But even then, Geddy Lee is one of the best bass players that ever walked the earth. And I think, what's the word? Steel sharpens steel. I think.
Well, yeah, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah. Iron sharpens iron. There you go. But I think that's what it was. I think that you can hear this as the process of listening to an album. Like we're doing an album a week at a time. And I think all three of them are lifting each other up. This is a case of the rising tides lifts all ships, as they say.
Exactly. They're spurring each other on, definitely, to greater works.
And I don't think anyone's really being. If there is a competition between the three, it's certainly a healthy competition. But you don't last as long as Rush have done if you're in competition with each other. You're bringing each other up, aren't you? You're challenging each other and mutually nurturing each other. Yeah. And
I think it was something that Neil said about them being just, just. I mean, what a three-piece. Being a three-piece, it has to be a democracy, because if two gang up on one, it's just bullying, isn't it?
I think,
and they always came to some sort of consensus.
Yeah, I think as well, if you look at lineup changes and all the rest of it, I think three pieces do tend to last long because there is less time to argue. If there is just the three of you, you can pretty much work everything out. When there's 4 or 5, so on and so forth,
you can
always
get
going to be someone that's not going to be happy.
It can fragment, unfortunately, but that's...
I think the longest lasting lineup probably would be Rush or ZZ Top. It was only recently where Dusty, forgive me, I forget the guy's surname, but he recently died. But up to that point, I think that lineup went back to the 60s.
Yeah. I think you've got a couple of bands there with the longevity. I think I don't know whether it's quite in the realm of Rush. Certainly, I think, isn't Def Leppard one of them? Because obviously they kept with their drummer Steve Allen, and of course
they changed guitarists.
Was it one? It was one guitarist, wasn't it?
Two.
It was two.
But I think the latest addition was Vivian Campbell, because he jumped ship from Dio to Def Leppard. But even then, he's been in them for God knows how long.
I was going to say he's been in there a long time.
Since the late 80s, at least, yeah. You had, I forget the guy's name, but yeah. By the time you're on the 4th album, the two original guitarists were gone. I think the original 2 guitarists were the first 2 albums. Then Phil, I forget his name, came in on the 3rd, and I think Vivian Campbell came afterwards. But yeah, it's been Joe Elliott, the drummer, and the bass player are the main three from.
Right. So
the people that are there have been there since the 80s. So
it's still quite a long time, isn't it? I know. I'm sure those who are listening can know other bands that have stood the test of time and managed to keep going. I dare say probably, I know that Bill Wyman left the Stones, but even then it had been a while. But the other four, I know Charlie Watts died recently or in the last couple of years, but they had obviously been together a long time. So there are other examples of that, whereas a lot of bands sort of, as you say, may do a couple of albums and then suddenly something changes. But yeah, these guys, these three, they just went through thick and thin together, really. I know, obviously, Neil, he was still called the new guy, even after all those years. Obviously, John Rutsey being the original, but Neil was there. He was there for all but one of the albums. So, and they've been quoted as saying there will never ever be another Rush, and that's it. It's definitely over, and it has been many years now since they've done anything.
I think, when Alex and Geddy are in a room together, they're Rush.
Yeah,
that's that. I think they are probably jamming together at least and playing together. How can they not?
Yeah.
And I did see a podcast. I think it might have been around the time that Geddy's book had come out, and it was. I think Neil had just been awarded something. He'd received an award that his wife and daughter received on his behalf.
Oh, he received it posthumously.
I think Primus were doing that tour as well, and I think they just did a little promo tour. They did a couple of interviews and appeared on a couple of podcasts. And in true Alex form, he says, "We've recorded a really good album. It's one of the best things we've ever wrote." And Geddy forgot to press record. So, we're going to have to work it all out again and do it again. So,
so that's it. It's another Hemispheres problem.
They have got together and they have played and they have wrote and shared ideas. We'll see. And I think they're going to go, right, unless this is up to scratch, unless this is a masterpiece, basically. Yeah. I don't think they'll bother. But but they're well within their right to. Whether they decide to play live again, I'm getting the impression that they didn't want it to end when it ended. Geddy has actually said the only regret he has with that final tour is that they didn't make it to Europe.
Yeah.
I'm happy it ended the way it ended. I just would have liked to have done a little bit longer. And then it would have been fine. But it is what it is.
I think they wanted it. Certainly, Geddy did, and
I think
Alex
they're quite enjoying not doing it now. They've not done it for a while. They're to start again. Oh,
yeah, exactly. So
I think I know.
I know he said that they wished that it had been a world tour. That last one, just
I
to.
think.
It
under the name Lee Lifeson or something like that. With I think. Or with a couple of different drummers. I think we discussed this before.
Yeah, I think we have. We've talked about it.
Are you kidding? You're going to be in the front row with me. Of course you are. You're going to go. You're going to go if it came to it. Yeah,
definitely.
When it comes to, I don't know about a new album though. If a new album, it would be Lee Lifeson, or if, like I say, I think they'd have to be writing. They'd have to really get the fire in their bellies to go. Yeah, I think this is good enough to release. I think this is.
Well, that's the thing, and also, of course, not just
who'd write the lyrics.
Exactly, not just Neil's drumming, but the lyrics.
Unless they did a Manic Street Preachers and just went through his scrapbooks and
possibly.
I don't know, but I think even Neil, I think even he subconsciously knew that Cocktail Angels was going to be.
Yeah.
Put it this way: if you didn't know that was going to be your final, send off. You couldn't have asked for a better one.
No, definitely not. But it Yeah, and so we're jumping way ahead there, aren't
Of
we?
course,
So,
but
yeah, well, so what, but getting back to this album, yeah, I mean it's brilliantly put together. No, it was hard work, and Geddy said it was the straw that broke the camel's back, because the subsequent effort they had to put into putting this album together, which this was an album that they recorded in Wales again, in the Rockfield Studios.
Yeah.
And they recorded it over a couple of months, but it was pretty intense. And then, of course, the subsequent tour. The tour was the longest tour they ever did, with 137 dates. And that's by far their longest tour ever, which is why they were quite relieved to finish this tour. Especially, I remember Gady saying it really became, both the album and the tour was one of attrition. They really were put through it, especially doing 17 consecutive one-night gigs. 17 one-night gigs, and so just traveling 17 nights to 17 different venues. He said no, it just got too much for them, and they just thought, we can't do this again.
Yeah, and this is a band that's sober as well.
Exactly.
Taking that into account, many of bands.
Yeah.
That I think you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I do.
I think it would have took a toll on many a band that were dealing with hangovers and come downs and
yeah, exactly.
all the rest of it.
It was
what is Hemispheres? The actual track is a bit hard to talk about because it goes through so many chops and changes, and unless
you've got you've got both of them stating their case. Apollo saying, I am the bringer of wisdom and truth and understanding, wit and wisdom, and and the subsequent, the people were delighted, and they did that, and they built their cities, and they did this, and then they became not disillusioned, but felt a bit empty. It didn't seem to be so strong. So then they went and sought out Dionysus, the bringer of love. So they're both stating their cases. I can give you this, 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 and this. And I bring laughter, and I bring music and joy, and bring the tears. Soothe your primal fears. Throw off those chains of reason, and your prison disappears. I mean, really cleverly thought out lyrics, but it just puts it. It's almost like a courtroom. It's like they're stating their case and their credentials before it goes to that part 4 of the Armageddon, the battle of the heart and the mind, with a universe divided, and obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's as much for in case you haven't listened to this and you're using this episode as an introduction, as we often say, you can either use these episodes as an introduction to the album or listen to it yourself and then use this as an afterthought. But it's a bunch of songs put together, really, because it goes through so many different waves, and it's hard to sort of describe exactly what's going on because
it is
so much does go on. Everything happens basically in 18 minutes. I mean, you've got a nice ambient keyboard bit with Geddy singing a bit over the top, but that was some cool little synthesizer usage there. But yeah, you've got some catchy riffs going all the way through it. You've got great, it's just an enjoyable piece of music. It's 18 minutes, but it's a effortless 18 minutes. This isn't something to be put off by at all.
Yeah, it's not. You're not staring at your watch, and it takes you on this journey, and it really is. And I've certainly, like yourself, being into music anyway, and certainly from a musicianship point of view, it's very interesting to listen to anyway. But getting the lyrics in that as well, and what the picture that's being painted here, and that Armageddon part, it's got that slightly chaotic, jolty unsettling rhythm, because that's time signature changes there, but again done very, very well, very clever. But to just sort of paint the picture musically that there's confusion and that there's conflict there between the heart and the mind in all of us at times, isn't it? And it's put across so well. And then of course this is where the protagonist who went through the black hole appears with the words, so I'm just quoting from the some who did not fight brought tales of old to light. My Rocinante, the name of the ship, sailed by night on her final flight to the heart of Cygnus. It's a reprise and a recap, not reprise, or just a recap. To the heart of Cygnus, fierce and false, we set our course, spiraled through that timeless space to this immortal place, which is the last lines of that Armageddon piece. And then that goes into, and then of course it do all them accents, and then it goes and plays that little bit of Cygnus X1 with the accents down, 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 and then it goes into that really low. And this is where I think that synthesizer, it's a very unearthly sounding synthesizer sound on this. I think it's an Oberheim polyphonic keyboard which Geddy uses on that, and it gives it that sort of otherworldly sensation. It's also, it actually sounds quite a little bit uncomfortable, doesn't it, really? Just when you listen to it, it's sort of slightly on edge. And then you have Geddy's voice coming in, and he's singing it quite melancholy, isn't it? And it's quite low, and he's basically being that character. I have memory and awareness, no shape or form, disembodied spirit, and dead and yet unborn. And then it goes into passing into Olympus, as told of tales of old. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can see the lyrics that well on the CD version. Yeah, but if you can read them, can't you? So sometimes the print is so small you can't really see it. To the city of immortals, marble white and purest gold. I mean, just very simply put, but just paints a picture in your mind straight away.
I see the gods in battle rage on high, thunderbolts across the sky. I cannot move, I cannot hide. I feel a silent scream begin inside. Yeah,
it's absolutely brilliant. And again, just going back, when it goes into this quite a bit, in the background you can hear bits of Cygnus X1 being played. It sort of comes and fades away from one ear to the other, I think. It again, just very, very, very clever, and just giving you a reminder where it all started. So yeah, and then of course after that line that you just said comes in really strong, and Geddy's singing up quite in a high register again, and basically his scream caused everything to stop. Was it Apollo was astonished, Dionysus thought me mad, but they heard my story further and they wondered and were sad. Looking down on from
a world of doubt and fear, it's a surface splintered into sorry hemispheres.
Yeah.
They sat a while in silence, then they turned at last to me. We will call you Cygnus, the god of balance you shall be. Here we go.
That's it. And then of course the nice instrumental towards the end there. And as I always say, with something like this, it's always nice to finish it off with a massive Chinese gong at the end, just to finish it off. But then it's sort of like a false ending, because you get that lovely bit at the end with the acoustic guitar and Geddy singing that nice melody on the sphere, which you've already quoted. But brilliant. Let the truth of love be lighted. Let the love of truth shine clear. Sensibility armed with sense and liberty, with the heart and mind united. in a single perfect sphere. I mean, again, just that sort of sums up the entire side, really, just in them lines, really, doesn't it? It's a terrific. I think, yes, it was their last side epic, but it's a brilliant one. I think it's a brilliant side track and a good one to finish on, I guess.
There's no, how would they, where do they go from there? From just otherwise just becoming convoluted for the sake of it? And
yeah, I think so. I think, and I think the thing is, obviously, you've got other bands who are renowned for doing long epics like Genesis, Floyd. Yes, I mean, Yes did quite a few side epics, but they were a bit lighter. This is quite heavy musically, and the prog rock fans loved this one. They absolutely loved this. They thought it was pretty accessible. I think it is as well. It's not really. I've certainly got nothing more, and I'm just trying to see if I've got any other.
No, I think you've pretty much.
I don't think there was much more in that. Yeah, they feel that the complexity of this lyric is very impressive, and 2112 and Fountain of Lamneth are quite simple compared to these. I don't know. I'm not sure if I completely agree with that, but I don't know what would be your thoughts on that.
I don't know. I think this one I enjoy this more when I listen to it. It seamlessly goes along. I think I'd have trouble remembering a lot of it off the cuff. There's certain bits of this I couldn't sing to you. You know, I think 2112 I could pretty much just go bum ba dum ba ba dum and sing the whole thing to you and things like that. But I think this one's a bit harder to, you know, remember straight out. But it is while the other ones are a bit more complicated and a bit more hard to grasp, but you're still you're paying attention, taking it all in. This one is a bit more. It kind of just passes you by. As it plays.
It's quite deceptive. I think that for me, the bit I probably remember the most is the prelude, the very first bit. Then that quiet part with because of that synth, just the sound of that synth, and then Geddy's voice coming in over the top of it, and the sphere. I sort of remember that, but it's when you listen to it, it's not that it's forgettable. It's just quite deceptive. In it, as you said, it's if anything, it's quite subtle to the point where it doesn't sort of stick in your mind. But that's no way decrying how good this is, and it is well loved by the fans, and never ever has been sort of just brushed aside as.
I mean, there's a really good YouTube channel that's, you know, they called Downfall Network, and I think it's a couple of different YouTubers that sort of chip in. That's why it's called the network.
Yeah,
I think it's a couple of people might record a video like I would record now, but then someone else will edit it. So they do these really long, in-depth videos, which is I've nicked it for my channel. I don't mind admitting that. Where I do these hour-and-a-half long videos where I go through a band's back catalogue. They do the same thing, but it's nice and edited. They've got clips from live stuff, videos. They'll have the artwork going across the screen like that with writing and all that. Impeccable editing. And where I sit and do it all in one take, I think they might do it in bits and they edit it together and everything. But yeah, very, very good channel. Hell of a lot more subscribers than me. So there's no way you're watching this and you haven't heard of Downfall Network. But yeah, they've done a Rush retrospective. And I think Brody, who did that one, he summed up Hemispheres perfectly. He just said Hemispheres is my favorite Rush album, I think it thinks it's their best album on many different ways. He went, but it's the last album I would give to someone who hadn't heard of Rush. And he went, I can't think of another band because normally you go, well, if I want to get into this band or I want to get into that band, and you go, oh, definitely, you've got to start with this one. Definitely. Try that one. Try it. Yeah. No. He went, that's the last one I'd give him. But in a lot of ways, it is his favourite album. And I can see that. That makes a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense. I think because it is thematically and musically quite heavy in the production and the execution of it, I think it's quite accessible, but for many people it probably wouldn't be, and you'd need something a little bit more quaffable, I suppose, with regards to Rush. So you'd probably go to, I don't know, I dare say probably 2112 you could probably get away with, but people might say, oh no, perhaps go back and listen to now you'd probably say, oh no, something like Permanent Waves or Moving Pictures.
Yeah, of course, we've got that as well. But I think if you put this on and didn't tell someone you're about to listen to an 18-minute long song, they wouldn't even notice.
No, they probably wouldn't.
Same goes to 2112. As much as they are long songs, I bet if you didn't tell someone you're about to listen to this, how long it is, I bet it would go by without even noticing.
Probably, you're probably right. And
well, we're nearly an hour in and we've covered one song. So,
you couldn't just say a 5-minute thing about this particular song. You just couldn't.
No, and we've gone off on some tangents, which is all good, because how do you not go off on a tangent when you're discussing a story of a man who falls into a black hole?
Yeah.
Then goes on to discover the meaning of life.
Exactly. It's not something.
I bet they went off on a few tangents as well.
Yeah. Oh, I reckon they did. It's not something that happens every day, is it? Let's be honest.
I don't think the whole discussion was summed up in these lyrics. I think it was slightly.
Yeah, probably.
Slightly edited.
Yeah, indeed.
I think what we got on this song was actually the minutes of the meeting. So.
An abbreviated minutes, as well.
Right, so let's move on then to Circumstances. This is pretty straightforward in Rush's terms, but I think this is a fantastic song. This is Rush in a typical form. I think I'd go so far as to say this is one of my favourite Rush songs, actually. I think this has got echoes of the original Rush and the self-titled and Fly By Night days. It's got a good driving riff, good soaring choruses, and I love that fantastic little bit in the middle with the keyboards. That this is what I'm thinking of when I describe the album as magical and dreamy, and it's very sort of sunset vibes going off, and it's an album it's a song that you can sort of drift away to, even if you're not without taking too much notice of the lyrics. But no, it's just a great. How long is it? 3.5 minutes,
something like that, or 3:45.
But yeah,
3:42 it says. 3:42.
It's what I like from Rush. Good heavy riffs, good catchy chorus, and a fantastic keyboard interlude and just stuck in the middle there, which I think is brilliant.
Well, it is. It's sort of almost like a refrain, isn't it? But it's a very, very a total opposite of the side one. This is a very concise song. Standard format. I don't know. I mean, there's quite a few ideas in this and a few little nuances in it, but it's put together in such a concise way. And I like that middle bit as well. As you say, you've got that keyboards, and that's augmented by Peart with some, I think it's crotales. I think he uses it, or orchestral bells. He's playing a melody on the percussion as well, which just gives it that nice, as you say, sort of almost whimsical and joyful. It is like a joyful part, isn't it? Because I mean, Circumstances is quite. It's quite heavy, and there's a lot of unison playing with all three of them, with the riff and everything. It's not just Alex playing it; it's Geddy playing it as well. and Peter's just pushing it along. I'll say just, I mean pushing it along brilliantly, and it takes it. It's developed an awful lot more way away from their blues rock beginning and blues rock era at the beginning, but they're still playing these unison pieces in a slightly different way. I mean, it is quite heavy, especially when you come out of that quiet section and it comes back in. It's very strong, very, very strong sounding, very tight song. I mean, the guy in here calls it, I don't know whether you, proto metal. I said,
if you took the keyboard, that little interlude in the middle of the song, and took that out, I would say it was proto metal, just like the original album's proto metal.
Yeah,
you know, we were talking about the early influences with Hendrix, Cream, Blue Cheer, Budgie. Well, that was all proto metal. So I would say those riffs go back to the proto metal days. I suppose we're still in the proto metal days. We're still in the 70s. Well, when was Sabbath? If you said Sabbath was the first.
But this,
I mean proto metal as in
on
the 80s, you know. Iron Maiden, Priest.
Yeah, this sort of predates it, I suppose. This is an earlier, I mean, we've said this before, that it's a sort of an earlier form of something that, like the bands like Maiden and that, would just take it and run with it and take it somewhere else. But there's a type of it here with them. Again, the lyrics on this one are sort of quite short and to the point, really. On this,
I think you've got a pretty standard rock song with that, be it proto metal or whatever that is. But that lovely little section in that minute, just that awesome spacey little. It just it brings to mind like that sort of landscape artwork that you'd get on the, you know, like a fantasy or sci-fi book as it opened up that land, or like a Yes album cover, really. And I suppose like the album cover that we've got, I mean, that otherworldly. The best music is where you can just imagine. You just paint a little picture in your head, and I always paint a little picture in my head. Especially driving around in this time of year when the sky's all different colours at certain times of night. We had this beautiful sunset the other day where the whole sky was this peachy orange, and everyone on Facebook was taking pictures of it from their gardens, and that it just captures weird, mystical little moments like that. You know,
it does. And again, I think hats off to Hugh Syme, who is the graphic designer. This is an album cover that people do recognise and think, oh, because it is quite striking, and possibly.
I love seeing this album cover on the wall of a TGI Fridays.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, indeed. I think possibly one of their most iconic album covers.
Up there with the.
With the 2112, it's a very very distinctive album cover for a very distinctive album. It's absolutely terrific. This was the other thing. I think this is something that I know you've mentioned him before, Sebastian Bach.
Yeah,
he was Rush member number 3 of the Rush fan club. And he said the thing he liked about it is, he said, you don't hear many bands singing French. Plus la change, plus c'est la même chose. That's my best French, and sorry if it's offended any French people listening.
But was very, very Del Boy.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Definitely. Well, he got away with it, so why can't I? But yeah, which is not, you don't really hear that from rock bands doing that. I mean, I remember Blondie singing some French on one of her songs. Is it Sunday Girl? I think it was. Yeah, it was Sunday Girl.
Yeah.
But yeah, he said you don't hear many bands singing in French, and that means the more the things change, the more they stay the same. Well, it's quite profound, really.
Yeah, well, Sebastian Bach is Canadian as well.
Yes, he is. Yeah,
So, and there are certain sections of Canada that speak French. So,
well, yeah, and that
might
makes
be what he's
sense.
alluding to, yeah.
Yeah, it would certainly with the guys. They were. Is it Montreal? No, it's Toronto. I think they hail from. I think it's Toronto,
Right.
or is it Montreal? I can't remember. Well, obviously Montreal is French speaking, but it's more towards the east. But yeah, you've got big swathes of Canada that speak French, and that's the first language, I believe.
Yeah, I mean Sebastian Bach, notably singer of Skid Row, who are from New Jersey, but
oh right,
I'm guessing he moved to America when before he got that gig, or I guess he's in America now. I don't know, but yeah, he's Canadian. So
yeah, that's just an interesting little aside, really. I mean, again, what sort of inspired Pierre to put that little bit of French in? It's clever. I dare say, I don't know if Geddy and Alex speak French. They might speak French naturally. I don't know. I don't know if Neil Peart did.
Well, Canada's a pretty big place as well. I mean, probably you probably get by learning it in certain regions.
Yeah,
it's probably handy to pick up a little bit.
Yeah, a bit like Del Boy, I guess.
Yeah, Monge too.
Potage, Bon Femme, and whatever.
Yeah.
No, I've got nothing else to say. I just
do you know anything about do I know it? Monge Fair Fender Push.
Yeah, it was. Oh dear! Again, we're digressing here. There's loads of them, isn't there? You know. What was the other one of his? Après-moi la déluge or something. And then, some funny ones, but yes, I do apologise to any French-speaking people who are listening to this. Yes, my French is not my forte, but again, all I'm saying is it's very clever how it's been incorporated into this song, and again, just to reiterate, a lovely piece, very concise, instrumentally interesting, great colours, as you've said. Again, they're just showing there the variation on the palettes that they've got on their easel, I suppose, to paint these pictures. Very clever, good song. Was a crowd favourite. I don't think they played this. They played it obviously on this. I don't actually know if they played this on the. No, they didn't. I don't think they played this particular song on the Hemispheres tour. I was looking at the Hemispheres.
Yeah, I'm looking at this set list of this. They played the Trees.
I did the Trees because the Trees, which we're going to get on to, is a big
and
fun.
They do the Villa Strangiato. They do a little bit of Hemispheres, but not.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. I mean, I've seen them play Circumstances, but that was on a much later tour.
As long as they've played it at all, yeah.
They did play it. They definitely played it, but I think on the Hemispheres tour, they didn't. I think they played everything else, obviously, because they played Cygnus Hemispheres, Cygnus X1 Book 2 in its entirety, the Trees and La Villa Strangiato. It's pretty much all the album, all barring 3.5 minutes or whatever it is. So, but again, a great song, great little song, and I think it's up there with some of the favourites as well. So
yeah. All right, let's get into the Trees. Starts off quite well with a nice acoustic classic guitar. There is Trouble in the Forest. There is trouble. What is the opening line?
There is unrest in the forest, and there is trouble with the trees.
There we go. And you'd be forgiven to at first thinking, "Oh, are we back in Tolkien territory?" Obviously, if you've read Lord of the Rings, the Trees, and little biblical nod in that little bit as well. There's a biblical story where a angel comes down during a battle and he says, "Are you fighting with us or you?" And he says, "I'm neither."
Yeah.
And that's what the trees say to. Not sure who he says it to, but he says, "Oh, are you on?" And he goes, "I'm not on anyone's side because neither are on mine." Which is a great little bit in Lord of the Rings. But no, that's not what this is about. So I've gone off on a tangent for nothing.
That's all right. Don't worry.
But
don't worry about that.
Yeah, we'll get into the music in a sec. But lyrically, this is about argument among the trees. The oaks are taking up all the sunlight, and the oaks are saying, "Well, hold on a minute. I can't help being told you should be grateful to us because we're protecting you from the sunlight. You should be enjoying the shade." And then the maples form a union, and then they want equality, and they get equality because all of them get chopped down.
Yeah.
And I just think for the amount of people that got bent out of shape for the Ayn Rand influences, I thought there'd be a lot of people today that would take an issue to the lyrics of this song. Not to get
possibly, but you've mentioned it. It's all about a song of equality, really, and about there, in society where there's an equality among people. Nobody's better than anybody else, and nobody's more deserving than anybody else, which is a little bit different and sort of an antithesis of the Ayn Rand stuff that Neil sort of not championed, but he was very much into, with not being a part of a collective, but to be the individual against the masses. This time it's all about everyone being on a similar level. So it's a bit of a change in that, isn't it? So it's quite.
But I think what the moral of the story of the trees is in pursuit of quote unquote, or what is being sold as equality. It doesn't lift the bottom up; it just drags everyone down.
Yeah. That's true. Goes to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
I think it. But again, it's still slightly different, isn't it? But again, I think that's the twist on it, and you've got that right. Interesting time signature change in this again. You wouldn't even feel that it would be that. Again, you've got that sort of it's quite strong musically. Again, lovely, as you say, classical guitar intro, quite strong, and quite a good chorus. But there's loads of little different ideas in here. Again, some great. Sorry.
You've got the bit where it sort of breaks down, and then you've got that.
The wooden blocks.
And then as the song builds up again, that nice little riff, that boom, 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 and that like the little section, I think is a little taster of what's to come. Because I think this little part of the song, this whole song actually, I think could quite fit on the next album. And I think as much as we've been talking about, this is an echo to this what's coming up. I think this is actually a taster of what's to come in a different roundabout way, in a more simpler rather than more of a.
I think it's very again, it's another very concise song, but there's so many different ideas that they've put into this. It's I think you're right. It's sort of more forward looking.
It's a simple enough song to listen to, but you wouldn't want to cover it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It sounds easy, but it isn't.
Yeah.
And as I say, definitely going from it switches from 4/4 to 6/4 in time signature, and you have to know where they pivot and all this sort of stuff. Again, I know we say about great playing on this. I like Alec Lyson's solo on this, but I enjoyed Lee's bass at the beginning, quite melodic, to actually bring it all in underneath the guitar and the singing that it comes in. It's just very, very clever, and he's got an effect on it which gives it that slightly mellow sound, and then of course it comes in really strong. And the comment on here is all right, as you're saying things. I'm just glancing down at these comments. They said this is a powerful rock section that would not sound out of place on any album by The Who. Possibly. I don't know whether you would agree with that, especially with its strong melody. I don't know. Would you think that'd be on a Who album? I think probably because of the different textures because obviously Pete Townsend would use acoustics as well as the electric and the cut, like things like Behind Blue Eyes and you think of a Tommy and stuff like that as well. I suppose that's really what the comment is.
Oh, and the Who influence is there, isn't it?
Yeah, you can still hear.
It's the Who is baked into the cake.
Yeah, and no bad thing. Exactly. Yeah. I'm just looking at this comment. It says the song's lyric has been controversial for numerous reasons. While talking about the song, Peart explained, I was working on an entirely different thing when I saw a cartoon picture of these trees carrying on like fools. I thought, what if trees acted like people? So I saw it as a cartoon, really, and I wrote it that way. He's wrote it almost like a cartoon.
Yeah, I think I've.
I don't know if you've got. Yeah, if you've got that comment on there.
I think he's. Yeah, I think both our writers here have pulled that from the same source.
Oh right, okay then. So I wondered if you had something different.
Yeah, lyrically, the song's a piece of Dodgerel, claims Neil Peart on Modern, published in 1980. I certainly wouldn't be proud of that. What I would be proud of is taking pure idea and creating an image for it. I am very proud of what I achieved in that sense. I wrote the trees in about 5 minutes. It's a simple rhyming and phrasing, but it illustrates a point clearly. I wish I could do that to all the time. It was a flash. I was working on an entirely different thing when I saw a cartoon picture of these trees carrying on like fools.
That was it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And I thought, what if trees acted like? Yeah. So it seems like we've got the same.
It's got the same thing from there. Yeah. I think he's. It says here, while Peart is often hesitant to discuss, or was often. I should keep saying it. R.I.P. Neil Peart. While Peart was often hesitant to discuss specifics about his lyrics, numerous fans decided to interpret this lyric in different ways, usually depending on their own political views. It was used as a political thing. It says here, the US Senator Rand Paul regularly quoted from the trees, using the lyric as an allegory for the ills of state intervention. Keen to avoid any political association, the band sent a cease and desist order to Paul, insisting that he stopped quoting their song. I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. But then again, I don't live in the US.
Yeah. Rand Paul is a libertarian. So
yes, yeah.
With your Iron Man, yeah.
Yeah. But they didn't want to be associated with anything. They're just saying what they're saying as well. But yeah, it's again a good song. Enjoy it. It's to the point, and I agree with you. It certainly points to where they were going to go. I'm thinking how they were going to approach songs and songwriting in the future. Again, nice use of percussion, as you said, with the temple blocks, which again you wouldn't really think that he would use it. You think, would that really work? But it does. It just works. It just, again, very clever, very, very clever, as we've always been saying. I think I've covered everything that my own thoughts and what I've read about this song. Oh, incidentally, Circumstances was released as a single, and Trees was the B-side.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Imagine getting that as a single for the next Rush album. Right, okay. And then the actual thing turns up and bang, either side.
But it turns out that the Trees was more popular than Circumstances, even though it was the B-side.
I think on a surface level, though, that would probably be a bit more palatable
Yeah,
for
you
a
would think so.
radio.
But certainly for the fans, the trees, I mean, the trees would be played many tours. It was played on a lot of tours. It was a massive crowd favourite, massive fan favourite, and still is.
Right, on to the last track. We've not done bad. 4 songs. Yeah, to me, La Villa Strangiato, a exercise in, well, no, it's a, is it an exercise in self-indulgence?
Yeah, that's what it is. But La Villa Strangiato is strange house or strange village. And I think it's either there's some sort of confusion. Yeah, I don't know whether it. I sort of looked up, is this Spanish or is it Italian? And I think there's sort of a bit of division on whether it's French, not French, whether it's Italian or Spanish, or whether it's Pidgin Spanish or something like that. But that's what it apparently stands for, is strange house. And I don't know what you've got as to the reason why it's called this.
I don't know. I didn't look
right. Right. Okay. Well, it's
in the brackets an exercise in self-indulgence. I thought, well, that probably explains
it. This apparently comes from Alec Lifeson, and and it says here, okay, as we know, this is the first solely instrumental track that Rush ever did, and it's widely regarded as one of their most ambitious and impressive pieces, running at just over 9 minutes and split into 12 parts. The piece was apparently inspired by vivid dreams or nightmares experienced by Alec Lifeson. Geddy Lee was, on occasion, equally disturbed by these dreams, saying Alex doesn't really call them nightmares, they're just strange dreams, hence La Villa Strangiato. He's plagued with them and he drives us crazy by calling us up all the time to tell us about them until we just say, stop, you're giving me a headache. And it is an apt title for this shifting piece of music that encompasses, and again, it's different styles of music. You've got the rock, got a touch of jazz, touch of big band, and even cartoon music, it says here. And you can, when it's put like that and you listen to it, you think, yeah, I can hear this bit and hear that bit. And yeah, it's careful, but this is all about Alec Lifeson's landscape in his mind, I guess. and that's when it.
Yeah, I mean, your dreams do go off on while.
Yeah.
You know, you
when you remember them.
Yeah, and but even when you remember them, if you try and describe them, the more you talk, the less you make sense. You know, and the more you describe it, the less it makes sense. You go, I don't even know what the hell that was about. It made sense at the time, but now I'm talking about it. God knows what that was about. But yeah, just listening to it as an instrument, I think this song's a masterpiece. This is again another one of my favorite Rush songs. One of the best guitar solos I think I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And I love that bit of when it breaks down to that dun dun dun, and then that just that bum 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 bum. You know, I love it. And again, really atmospheric, really a bit of dark and brooding, but it's all these textures going on, and it paints. You know that. You know, Alex is a genius. I think as time's gone by, I think he's actually quite an underrated guitarist.
He is. He's often overlooked, and he is one of the greats.
I mean, there's two. I mean, another great instrumental for me is I'm not a huge Kiss fan. I think pretty much Alive 1 and 2, and this album, and a greatest hits to fill in the gaps. Is all I really need. I'm not a massive Kiss fan, but I do really like this album. And this was this is a 4-part set where they basically instead of an album, they all did a solo album each. So you had to buy 4, and he said that each member.
Yeah.
And so this is Ace Frehley's solo album, and the closing track on this, Fractured Mirror, is again one of my favorite instrumentals. And it's another one where you don't need to know what it's about. You just sit back and just picture, and you just paint a picture in your mind. And
it is, yeah. It's a
and that's how I feel with
this one,
La Villa Strangiato, or whatever the France it's called.
No, that's it. That's how I call it. Again, if it's wrong, I do apologise. I think La Villa Strangiato.
But again, I feel I picture fantasy landscapes is the best way to do it, and describe it. And just the song again goes in so many different ways that there's so many ways you can attach different emotions to different parts of the music. And again, in 9 minutes, it flashes by. There's so much that goes on that it's almost like waking out of a dream at the end of it, because you don't realise.
Yeah. And you're probably thinking, what the heck was all that about?
Yeah, but I'm thinking
brilliant.
of some fantasy film or somewhere where they go back in time or something, where they end up, boom, where they ended up, and this whole thing's gone on, and the rest of the world's hardly even noticed. The person just walked out the room, walked back in, and did you hear what I said? What? Like,
exactly.
No, and that's how this feels, really.
But again, just the way it starts off so quietly with the guitar, just the classical guitar, brilliantly played, almost Spanish in style. So I dare say this is probably more Spanish than La Villa Strangiato, more than Italian, I would have thought. So that sort of seems to lend it. Brilliantly played, and then of course it comes in with that lovely electric guitar pick, and then, as you say, it just builds it up and builds it up, and then you get it really strong. Great playing off of the riff as well. And again, so we've said it so many times about other songs, but for me, that I agree with you, it is arguably his best ever solo on any of the Rush stuff. And there are some great contenders, because I love his solo on Xanadu from the previous album as well. And then, of course, stuff he does on 2112. And so we can just go on and go on. But I think it's just the sheer emotion of how he paints a mood, sets a mood at the beginning with all the wah wah and that sort of, like you saying, that wah, 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 wah. Well, it sort of just, and the music is so sparse underneath it. It just gives him so much space.
It's in terms of what you define as a guitar solo and what makes a good solo, because is a guitar solo where you do just go off on a solo, and is there a good little mixture of technical playing and motion or melody, or does this just top off? This is just like the icing on the cake of a song. I think the icing on the cake of a song would probably be something like Limelight. I think the solo he does on Limelight is a beautiful melodic little solo, but it just paints the picture of the emotion of the song, which we'll cover when we get to that album.
Of course.
It's quite a simple. It's quite simple, actually. I could, I've
got to do that in my sleep, No,
with the solo on this one, it feels like, no, this is a composition on its own within the wider. This is its own.
It's
little piece within the wider.
It is. But it's. I think because of the sparse backing, which is tastefully done. I mean, you've got the bass pedals, and Piet just playing a very simple yet. But it's quite intricate. There are some little intricate plays between ghosting on the snare and little hi-hat chokes and stuff like that, which just gives it that little bit of flavour, just sprinkles a little bit of seasoning on it. But licensed solo on this, for me, is something that, I mean, you said the word, you used the word emotion. It's got an emotion to it that he just gradually, he's building it up, and it's quite a clean sound at the beginning. It sort of sounds like it meanders, and then when Piet just sort of comes in with a snare roll, and then he kicks in a distortion, but it's not overly distorted. It's piercing. It just really, when he hits that really high note, it's just beautiful. And then he just ramps it up, doesn't he? And he just gradually gets quicker and quicker, and when I listen to it, I can't fail to be moved by how how he does that solo.
Yeah,
so
I
it
think
is
as well.
arguably his best. It's arguably
Yeah,
his best.
I mean, again, one of my favourite bands, Pantera, Vinnie Paul, God rest his soul, and Dimebag Darrell. Vinnie Paul always said Neil Peart was his favourite drummer. He learnt to drum whilst just playing along to Rush records.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but feel as well that this guitar bit here, there's no way that didn't rub off on Dimebag, because, again, Dimebag's known for these big, thick, crunchy riffs, but that guy could solo with the best of them as well. And he would do real melodic little masterpieces in there as well. And yeah, I mean, some of the live footage as well, when he would just go off on one and do a little solo in between the things, some of the stuff he did that was, you know, you'd catch these little pieces of lightning in amongst it all, just these little, you know, he'd do this little melodic little bit. And yeah, he must have been nicking his brother's records on this particular part,
Probably, but not a bad person to emulate. And as we've said before, Alec Lyson is often overlooked, and he is very underrated. But I would say, if you want to listen to this and listen to this solo, and tell me that this guy's he is underrated and he's overlooked. But I think Alex is whenever I saw him live, I mean, he would, you know, he'd do the solos and that, but he was quite understated.
he was never like a showman.
No,
you know,
he would be
lights on
showmanship.
him.
Yeah.
He would just do it and didn't. Didn't need to.
He didn't. I mean, he might throw a few shapes and whatever, or do a little bit of shredding from time to time, but generally he was quite understated. But his playing just stood up for itself, you know. A bit like Gilmour in that respect from Floyd. He would just stand there and Gilmour just stands there and plays, you know. But you know it's him, you know. And it's the same with this guy. And so fantastic. And I think, well, if that's where he goes in a dream, it's not a bad place to be if you're hearing that, you know, just superb. Again, and then of course it comes out of that and it goes into these various other bits. I mean, it's a section called Monsters, and it again just, and then you get that little bit of bass solo, not much, but a little bit, here sort of playing almost like a jazzy sort of rhythm to it. And then you get these big drum breaks, which is getting a little bit of drum solo in there as well. So they're sort of sharing it as well. Yeah. And that's always interesting in a live. Sometimes they'll bring that right down and play it really quite sparsely and then bring it back up again, you know, as a live improv, so to speak. And that's always quite dynamic. So they would play around with this in a live setting over the years, and there would be some odd lyrics coming in, and this would be the time when Alex would walk up to the microphone and have a rant about something, or some funny story about a member of the road crew and all this sort of thing, and it would be different from night to night on various tours. This would be played on quite a few tours, not every tour, but a lot of tours. Again, it was a crowd favourite, and it was always, or not always, most of the time, it was the encore.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
it was the encore. I remember him doing this as an encore a few times. Again, a great way to finish the album, really. Again, there's a lot of syncopation in there. Quite a memorable riff, the old da 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 da. It's, you know, it's quite memorable to me anyway. Certainly.
Yeah, that particular section is what reminds me of that Ace Frehley song. Check that out. Actually, I think
I'd have to. Yeah, I mean, I know. Again, he's another guy.
Mirror.
Yeah, he's another guy who's sort of underrated, I suppose, isn't he?
He was my favourite member, Kiss. He was the one that, and Kiss stopped being fun when he left.
Yeah.
About Gene and Paul at that point. He was the Gene and Paul were always the disciplinarians in the band, while he was the fun one. He was the rock and roll.
He lives the life of rock and roll, you know.
Yeah,
that's what I heard about him.
I mean, and none of that as well. He gets a bit of a bad rap, gets a lot of bad press, but his last solo album, I don't know if he's done one or two since actually, but I got given an album to review.
Okay.
Space Invader was the opening track. I can't remember what it's really called now. Something to do with Spaceman, because he was the space one.
Yeah.
And that album was better than anything Kiss had put out in a good couple of decades. Yeah, it's obvious who was he might not have been the disciplined one out of them, but he was the one that could, you know.
Yeah.
And on that particular album, actually, because he was always, you know, he was the drunk one. Again, we've gone off on one. Everyone else on their respective solo albums, because it was, rather than doing a new album, why don't we all just do a solo album each? And everyone hired all sorts of musicians and this writer and that writer, and everything was big. And they sort of said to Ace, like, Ace, are you all right? Are you going to cope? You know, like, and he was like, no, I'll be all right. And all he had on there, I think, was the drummer.
Yeah.
Maybe he played the bass and all of the guitars himself. I think if there's any keyboards on there, maybe the producer jumped in. But he did all the vocals as well.
Okay.
And there's a bit of backing vocals by a female singer on one of the tracks. But yeah, apart from the drums, he played everything. And it was that to the rest of Kiss, basically. He said, you thought I was going to be the one that couldn't do it. And yeah, I think that's genuinely a great album. But yeah, like I said, I'm not massive. That Alive 1 and 2, the live albums. And yeah, what's not on them two are greatest hits will fill the gaps in for me. And that'll do for me when it comes to Kiss. I'm
That's
not
fair enough.
a massive fan. But I do really like that album. And yeah, you only have to watch an interview with Ace. You know he would be the fun one to be around, you know.
Yeah. Well, you've got to have that. I think probably in the music business, you've got to have a certain sense of humour, or certainly a sense of humour to probably be able to survive.
He's the one that shoots from the hip as well. He doesn't, you know, he just says it how he sees it, and you know, he'll dish a bit of dirt now and then as well. Like, hey, what? Yeah, he's from New York as well. Hey, what are they gonna do? Let me back in the band now? No, that ain't gonna happen. I'll tell you that. Gene did this and Paul said that. Yeah. What am I gonna lose? Hey, he's like that.
Yeah. Oh dear, yes. But again, I think going back to A Vida Strange, a lot of people thought, well, because this fairly long instrumental was Rush being a bit pretentious, but not really. They say, well, it's an exercise in self-indulgence.
Yeah,
so to me, that's very tongue-in-cheek and a sense of humour in itself just by saying it. Yeah, it is, you know. And they would muck around with this live as well, and they'd even do a polka-style intro on this. And they did that on the Time Machine tour, and that was funny. But then they go into the track, but instead of the Spanish guitar and the little bit of keyboards, it would, and the guitar pick, it'd be this polka intro of chords, you know, and it's just silly, you know. If you haven't seen it, just look it up. Just put Time Machine tour La Vida Strange Arts. I mean, how they started with like the. It's quite funny, but it works. You know, they just made it work. So to say that Rush haven't got a sense of humour is just ridiculous, really. And to say that they're pretentious, no, I don't think so. They're just not really. It's just they're just very clever, and but they've got that what they would call a goofy side to them anyway. So
yeah, they're certainly not. They don't lack self-awareness, and they certainly don't take themselves too seriously.
No, they don't, and they will make fun of themselves as well anyway, and they make fun of each other. So I was just looking at this statistics. This album, chart position wise, was number 14 in Canada. It was number 14 here in the UK and number 47 in the US. Again, still successful, still a very successful album. And this would be the last album that they released in the 70s. Even though they recorded the next album right at the end of 79, that didn't get released until 1980. So this was the last 70s album from Rush.
So the end of an era in more ways than one.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, as I say, it was an ending with the prog rock epics, but a beginning with regards to instrumentals, and and they sort of said, you know, Hemispheres was a very heavy album to make, very hard for them, and the heaviness of the touring, as I say, it was their longest ever tour. They needed to run away from that and move on and change again. Which we'll discuss next time, I guess.
Indeed. And next week we will be covering, I can't remember what it's called now. Permanent Waves. There you go. It's not actually on the album cover.
Well, it's very, very faint on there, isn't it? It's in that line.
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah, just in the middle there. Yeah, Permanent Waves. I was going to say The Sound of Radio, and I was thinking, come on, Joe, get it together. So, yeah, the end of the prog rock, and now we go into the new wave phase of the band, which we'll be discussing next week. And, I hope you've enjoyed this. Please, if you got this far into the show, give us one of them. Subscribe if you consider subscribing to the channel and get updates. And if you are a Rush fan, if you're enjoying this show so far, do us a favour. Just share this with a mate. If you're talking about Rush one day, just say to them, "Yeah, have you ever heard Rushcast? It's on Nightmare Cabin show. Go check it out," and then show it to them. That's all. Just show it to one mate. That's all we ask. And as always, we are going to be doing a different album each week. This goes out every Friday. We'll be doing the solo albums and side projects on the way. And this was Hemispheres, Permanent Waves next week. Thanks for watching. It's goodbye from me.
Yeah, and it's goodbye from him. And it's goodbye from me. Have a good week, everybody.
And also, check out Paul's band, Audioscope. Secrets and Lies. First album's out, available. And we'll see you next week. Take care, everyone.
Cheerio, folks. See ya.